Welcome to the Suspension Sessions from RBC, the podcast that dives into the science, service and setup behind MTB suspension. I'm Glenn, and together Robbie and I explore the fundamentals every rider should understand, from sag and seals to tuning, service intervals and long-term performance. If you want your suspension dialed, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome back folks. Today we're sitting at RBC with Robbie and we're going to talk about the dropper post. What can you tell us about droppers? Rob, how do we look after those?
Well, how's it, Glenn? Firstly, it's a fantastic day in the Bay, another Monday in the Bay, which means we've been riding the whole weekend and doing some amazing rides, Saturday and Sunday. We are very privileged to have such awesome riding here. And that's a good reason to own a dropper post, actually.
What are the benefits of a dropper post while we're there?
There's numerous benefits of the dropper post. For starters, I'll give you a little bit of history. The Taiwan bike show, I think it must have been about 2010. The guys, one of the brands, introduced me to a dropper post. At that stage, it was the first that I'd seen. It operated with a little lever underneath the saddle. You pushed it down. I wasn't super convinced. Having dealt with dropper posts in the 90s, where on the older 26-inch bikes, the steel frames, we had a little coily spring thing behind the seat. You could actually press it down. You opened up your quick release while you were riding, pushed the saddle down, closed the quick release, did your thing. And when you got to the bottom and you opened it up, and I think it had about a centimeter or so of up and down movement, but quite dodgy. Most of the time you'd have to get off your bike and do it. And no one kind of seen the value of it.
If you raised it while you were sitting on the bike, did you speak with a higher octave?
No, well, it was just a spring. It was like a kind of a funny looking spring thing at the back. No, it didn't have that much power. And keep in mind, it was working against the force of the quick release and also the friction in the actual seat tube itself. So yeah, at very best, it was a gimmick. Anyway, so fast forward till 2025. And I don't think that I can find a bike in the market, a mountain bike, that doesn't have a dropper post if it's designed to be a mountain bike. So it really has come a long way. I personally can't ride without one. I think it's improved my riding a lot, made me much more confident in my riding, and the ability to do things I wouldn't normally have been able to do on my older cross-country style bikes where we didn't have dropper posts. So yeah, definitely a plus.
So what are the advantages of getting the saddle out the way?
Well, the advantage of getting the saddle out of the way is obviously you can move around the bike a lot more. Currently with the saddle up, fully extended to the correct height when you're riding, you've got a limited amount of where you can put your body position, so fore and aft and sideways. Keep in mind that not only has the bikes improved from suspension wise, but also the trails have got a lot more rowdy. So what we would consider a fairly tame trail these days was considered a rowdy cross-country trail back in the 90s. And so dropper posts weren't really needed. But currently, if I look at some of the cross-country World Cup events that the guys are doing, that would have been, some of those things would have been considered downhills. Different bike requirements, everything, but the guys are doing them on their cross-country bikes now. Keeping in mind that today's cross-country bikes have got the same amount of travel as my downhill bike back in the 90s, so a lot has changed.
The bikes are capable and the riders are capable.
The bikes are very capable these days. So yeah, the benefits, going back to your initial question, the benefits are huge, especially for newbies, for beginners. It's fantastic to be able to move the saddle out of the way. It allows you to tackle obstacles without the fear of falling off your bike, because you're able to move your feet much lower to the ground. You can actually stand over the bike while you're on the saddle and both feet flat on the ground. I think that gives a lot of people a lot of confidence. It's also much easier to start on climbs with your seat post down, especially a steep climb. It's easier, just drop your post, you get on the bike, you can push off, it's much easier. But I think generally for cornering, for descending, and even for some technical climbs that the guys are doing on e-bikes, a dropper post is a key component.
Okay, and then that comes to the reason we're here today. How do we look after this thing and what do we need to look for?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say, and this for me is my pet peeve, it's a dropper post, not a riser post. So what I mean by that is most guys will store their bikes with the post fully compressed. Keeping in mind that most of these posts run with a pressure inside the post when it's fully extended of around 200 to 300 psi. So keep in mind that dropping that post and leaving it like that for extended periods of time degrades the seals completely, because you're pushing that pressure to 500-600 psi. And it's not designed for that. It's not a riser post, it's a dropper post. So if you look at the amount of times that you will compress the post versus the amount of times that it's fully extended, you're riding with it more extended than you are fully compressed. So don't leave it compressed. Otherwise, it's going to cost you money. What you need to obviously look for is, like anything else that works quite hard on a mountain bike, it's right at the back wheel. So everything that comes off the back wheel goes onto the dropper post. And when you compress the post, you're pushing it inside the post, for sure. Especially water. Water will get in everywhere. And any kind of rainwater or muddy water that you're riding on has if you let it evaporate, you'll see a film of dust. That's going in your post. Different posts have different degrees of seals. So yeah, I think it's important that you look at servicing them at fairly regular intervals. They do have a 50-hour and 100-hour and up to a 600-hour service. I think maybe 100-hour to start with is perfect.
So like any seal on a shaft, they don't seal completely. You are going to get some stuff.
Okay, so in understanding that most seat posts only have a scraper wiper on the top. And that keeps most of the stuff out. But as I said, any water will get inside there, and that water will have dirt inside. And that will mix with the oil, and it will definitely damage the post if it's not cleaned regularly. But it does a lot of other things. It will obviously wear out the parts inside. It will cause damage to the post itself, the upper, especially I see sand getting in the back through the water, and that wears out the coating off the post, which allows the bushing to kind of wear out the aluminium, forms a big dent in the post, all sorts of problems. You have to replace the upper, and it's just about understanding how it works.
Okay, then what happens at the 50-hour service?
As I said, I think a 100-hour service is good enough for most of these posts, depending on what it is. If it's a very lightweight post that doesn't work on an air spring, that's only got a little coil spring in it, that's got mostly plastic internally that allows it to go up and down and everything, those you will need to service a lot more regularly. They don't like water. Any water ingestion will cause it to seize or to fail properly.
So those the more budget-friendly versions?
No, those are actually quite expensive. So they're designed like that for a weight perspective, and that means that obviously they're using the lightest components possible. They're great posts, but they need some extra work.
So you really need to look after it if you want to protect your investment.
100%, yeah.
What is there to do in a dropper post? What's replaceable?
Every post has a guiding system. Because there's two tubes running inside of each other, you have to be able to stop the saddle from turning in a circle, because you've only got the bushings, which is guiding the upper and lower into each other. So you normally have 2 to 5 holes or flutes that have been worked into the post, which allows the post to glide on either brass or plastic bushings. Those brass or plastic bushings are basically parts that are designed to be sacrificed and are softer than the aluminium. So you will start to feel a side-by-side movement on the saddle. If you hold it in your hand while you're standing next to the bike, you can move the front of the saddle left to right. Provided it's only a couple of millimeters left to right, you're fine. In fact, if it didn't move, generally it means that the post is too restricted, and then it's not going to want to go down and up properly. But the good news is that if there is a little bit of movement, a couple of millimeters side to side, when you're pedaling, you won't feel it, because your thighs will be actually enjoying that little bit of extra space that it's creating for them to pedal up and down past it. So most posts will have that feeling, and it should be there. What you need to look out for is excessive movement. What I've seen on the plastic ones that have the plastic sacrificial parts is they shear off. If you have in a crash or something, they will turn the seat post to 90 degrees to the right or left and shear those plastic pieces off. Generally, they are replaceable. So on a service, those would normally be replaced. If they're not serviced, that's when they start to shear off.
So only every 100 hours?
So on a cartridge dropper post, the manufacturers recommend that they replace the cartridge every 12 months because it is a working unit. It is going to lose pressure after a while. It's not serviceable.
Okay.
Where your other posts that have serviceable insides will be serviced once a year anyway. So obviously don't need to replace that, but when you've got a sealed cartridge unit, it's nice and convenient to have a dropper post with a sealed cartridge in it. It means that, like your tires, it will wear out at some point. So it needs to be replaced.
So if someone's in the market for a dropper post, what should they be looking for?
Yeah, I think match the dropper post to your riding. If you're doing enduro or trail riding, you want a little bit of a longer post, can afford to carry a little bit of extra weight. You want to have the post drop a little bit further, give you a little bit more room when you're doing those big jumps or the drops that you're planning on. For cross country, weight is generally the key consideration. So obviously a shorter post with less drop is required.
And any part of the internals that you need to think about when you're buying one?
There's some really nice dropper posts in the market that are completely wireless. I think most of the major brands have them out at the moment. I'm a real big fan because I like to have a clean cockpit. If you want a dropper post that's going to be really nice for your bike and match your high-end bike, go for one without cables, a wireless one, yeah, definitely.
And then does it have a battery in it?
Oh yes, so there's normally a rechargeable battery, obviously because it needs to activate a switch inside the post, so which is rechargeable, but I mean they'll last 50 to 100 hours.
Awesome, thanks Rob.
Thank you, man.
Very interesting stuff. Who would have thought
I
that?
love my dropper post. Can't ride without it.
Bums are important. Take care, see you at the next one.
Thanks, mate. That's it.